A cowboy riding home heard crying from the desert rocks. Inside a dirty sack he found a dying baby with big blue eyes. The tiny child looked up and whispered, "Daddy," to the stranger. That one word changed both their lives forever. Sometimes angels come in the smallest packages. Before watching full story, comment below from where are you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The sun was setting over the wide Texas plains. The sky turned orange and red like fire. Jake Morrison rode his old brown horse slowly down the dusty trail. He was tired after working all day with the cattle. Jake was a simple cowboy who worked at the R Ranch for 15 years. Everyone in town knew Jake as a quiet man. He never talked much, but he had a good heart. People said he carried some deep sadness with him. Nobody knew exactly what happened in his past, but they could see the pain in his eyes. The other cowboys respected him because he worked hard and never caused any trouble. Jake's horse walked slowly through the evening air. The wind was gentle and warm. Then Jake heard something that made him stop. At first he thought it might be a wounded animal or maybe a coyote pup crying. But as he listened more carefully, his heart began to race. It sounded like a human baby crying. Jake pulled on the reins and stopped his horse. He looked around the empty landscape. The crying sound was coming from near some large rocks beside the trail. He climbed down from his horse and walked toward the sound. His old leather boots made soft crunching noises on the dry desert ground. There, hidden behind a big boulder, was a dirty burlap sack. The heartbreaking crying was coming from inside it. Jake's hands were shaking as he carefully untied the rope around the sack and opened it. Inside was the tiniest baby he had ever seen. The baby was no more than 4 months old. He had big blue eyes filled with tears and the most innocent face Jake had ever seen. The child was very thin and dirty. His little clothes were torn and filthy. Someone had clearly abandoned this precious baby and left him here to die alone in the harsh desert. "Dear Lord in heaven," Jake whispered softly. He carefully lifted the baby out of the terrible sack. The child felt so light in his strong arms. Jake's heart was breaking as he looked down at this innocent little face that had been thrown away like garbage. The baby looked up at Jake with those enormous blue eyes. Suddenly he stopped crying completely. In the tiniest, weakest voice, the baby made a sound that nearly brought the tough cowboy to his knees. The baby whispered, "Daddy?" Jake felt hot tears fill his own eyes. This little angel was calling him Daddy. This abandoned child was reaching out for love and protection from a complete stranger. Jake's heart, which had been locked away and closed off for so many lonely years, suddenly cracked wide open. "It's going to be okay now, little one," Jake said in the gentlest voice. He wrapped the baby carefully in his own warm jacket. "I've got you now, sweet boy. Nobody is ever going to hurt you again. I promise you that." Jake looked all around the area, hoping to see some sign of whoever might have left the baby there. Maybe there would be footprints or horse tracks or some clue about who could do such a terrible thing. But there was absolutely nothing except the empty sack and the vast, endless Texas landscape stretching in every direction. The nearest town was Millfield, about 20 miles away through rough desert terrain. Jake knew he had to get the baby there as quickly as possible. The child desperately needed food, clean water, and medical attention. He might not survive much longer without proper care. Jake carefully tucked the baby inside his jacket to keep him warm and protected from the cool night air. Then he climbed back onto his horse and began the long ride to town. He rode as fast as he could while still being gentle enough not to hurt the precious cargo he carried. As they traveled through the dark night, Jake talked softly to the baby to keep him calm. "Don't you worry about anything, little fella. We're going to take real good care of you from now on. I don't know who those terrible people were who left you out there, but they made the biggest mistake of their lives. You're going to be just fine now." The baby seemed to understand Jake's kind voice. He calmed down completely when the cowboy spoke to him. Every few minutes, he would look up at Jake with those trusting blue eyes and whisper that same precious word, "Daddy?" Each time the baby said it, Jake felt his heart grow bigger. This innocent child had already claimed him as his father, even though they had just met. There was something magical about the connection between them that Jake couldn't explain. When they finally reached Millfield, it was nearly midnight. The whole town was dark and quiet. Jake rode straight to the house of Dr. Samuel Hayes, the town doctor. Dr. Hayes was a kind old man with white hair and gentle hands. He had delivered half the babies in the county over the past 30 years. Jake knocked urgently on the doctor's door. Dr. Hayes came to the door in his nightclothes, but when he saw the situation, he immediately invited them inside without asking any questions. "Where in the world did you find this little one?" Dr. Hayes asked as he carefully examined the baby on his kitchen table. "Left in a burlap sack out by Miller's Creek," Jake replied. His voice was still shaking with a mixture of anger and sadness. Someone just threw him away like he was a piece of trash. Left him there to die all alone. Dr. Hayes shook his head sadly as he checked the baby's condition. I've seen this kind of thing before, unfortunately. Times are very hard for many families right now. Some desperate people make terrible choices when they can't feed their children. But this little angel is incredibly lucky that you found him when you did. A few more hours out there in the desert and... He didn't need to finish the sentence. Both men understood what would have happened. The good doctor cleaned the baby gently and examined him from head to toe. He's definitely malnourished and quite dehydrated, but otherwise he appears to be healthy. I guess he's about 4 months old, maybe a little younger. With proper food, water, and care, he should recover completely. Jake felt a huge wave of relief wash over his entire body. Thank God for that document. What happens to him now? What's the next step? Well, I'll need to contact Sheriff Williams first thing in the morning. He'll be required to try to locate the parents or any family members. But honestly, Jake, in cases like this, that search rarely leads anywhere useful. Most likely, this baby will end up being sent to the state orphanage in San Antonio. The very thought of this precious little baby ending up in a cold, crowded orphanage made Jake's stomach turn. He had heard terrible stories about those institutions, overcrowded buildings full of unwanted children, not enough food to go around, and staff members who were too busy to give individual love and attention to each child. What would happen if someone wanted to adopt him and give him a proper home? Jake asked quietly, barely able to get the words out. Dr. Hayes looked at Jake with knowing, understanding eyes. Are you seriously thinking about adopting this baby yourself, Jake? Jake was silent for several long minutes. He had never once considered the possibility of having a family of his own. After losing his beloved wife Sarah and their unborn child in that terrible accident back in Missouri 15 years ago, he had convinced himself that he was meant to live alone for the rest of his days. But now, looking down at this tiny helpless baby who had already called him Daddy, something deep inside Jake's soul was awakening. I don't know the first thing about raising a baby, Doc, Jake admitted honestly. I'm just a simple cowboy who lives in a small one-room cabin. I'm away from home working with cattle from sunrise to sunset most days. What kind of life could I possibly give a child? Jake Morrison, Dr. Hayes said with a warm smile, this little boy has already chosen you as his father. Did you see how completely he calmed down the moment you picked him up? Some connections in this world are just meant to be, and you can't argue with destiny. The baby had fallen asleep peacefully in a nest of soft blankets, but his tiny hand was still wrapped tightly around Jake's rough finger. Even in his sleep, the child seemed to instinctively know that Jake was his protector and guardian. Let me think about this overnight, Doc, Jake said softly. Can he stay here with you until morning? Of course he can stay, Dr. Hayes replied kindly. But Jake, please don't think too long about this decision. This little boy desperately needs a loving father, and from everything I can see, you need him in your life just as much as he needs you. Jake spent the entire night sitting in Dr. Hayes' parlor, watching over the sleeping baby. Every time the child stirred or made the smallest sound, Jake was right there beside him, speaking in soothing tones and making sure he felt safe and protected. By the time the sun came up, Jake knew exactly what he had to do. When Dr. Hayes came downstairs in the morning, he found Jake carefully feeding the baby warm milk from a bottle. I want to adopt him, Doc, Jake announced without looking up from the baby's face. I know I don't have much money saved up, and I certainly don't know anything about being a father. But I already love this little boy with all my heart. I simply cannot let him be sent away to some cold orphanage where he'll just be another unwanted child. Dr. Hayes smiled broadly. I was really hoping you would say exactly that, Jake. I'll be happy to help you with all the legal paperwork and adoption procedures. Sheriff Williams is a good and fair man. I'm sure he'll support your decision completely. And as for learning how to be a good father, well, that's something every man has to figure out as he goes along. The next several weeks passed by in a whirlwind of activity and change. Jake had to make special arrangements with his boss at the Triple R Ranch. Surprisingly, Mr. Richardson was completely understanding and supportive of the situation. That innocent baby needs a good, loving home, Jake, Mr. Richardson said with genuine warmth. You're one of the best men I've ever known. When the boy gets a little older, you can bring him to the ranch with you during the day. We'll all help raise him. We'll make this work somehow. All the other cowboys at the ranch were amazed by the incredible transformation in Jake's personality. The quiet, sad, lonely man they had known and worked with for 15 years was suddenly full of life, energy, and purpose. He would talk for hours about every little thing the baby did, every smile, every sound, every tiny movement. Jake decided to name the baby Samuel, in honor of Dr. Hayes who had helped save his life. But he called him Sammy for short. Jake worked day and night to convert part of his small cabin into a proper nursery. He built a beautiful wooden crib with his own hands and painted it bright blue. All the ranch hands pitched in to help, bringing baby clothes, toys, and supplies from town. Mrs. Henderson, who owned and operated the general store, became Jake's unofficial expert advisor on all matters related to baby care. She patiently taught him how to change diapers, how to recognize when Sammy was hungry or tired or uncomfortable, and how to make the baby laugh with silly faces and sounds. "Jake Morrison," she said one afternoon while watching him gently rock Sammy to sleep, "I never in a million years thought I would live to see the day when you'd be singing lullabies to a baby. But here you are, and it's the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed. That precious child has brought out a wonderful side of you that's been hidden away for far too long." Jake blushed with embarrassment, but he didn't try to deny the truth of her words. Little Sammy had indeed changed absolutely everything about his life. The terrible loneliness that had been his constant companion for 15 long years was completely gone, replaced by overwhelming joy and a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. As the months passed, it became crystal clear that Sammy was growing into a happy, healthy, incredibly bright child. His very first real word was "Daddy," spoken clearly and strongly, and it made Jake cry tears of pure happiness. The baby who had been carelessly thrown away like worthless garbage was now the absolute center of someone's entire universe. When Sammy was 8 months old, an unexpected crisis arose. A strange woman appeared in town asking questions about a missing baby. Jake's heart nearly stopped beating when Sheriff Williams came to his cabin to tell him about the situation. "There's a woman from over in Brookfield County who claims her baby was stolen from her about 3 months ago," the sheriff explained carefully. "She's been going from town to town asking if anyone has seen him. I'm legally required to investigate her claims." Jake held Sammy protectively against his chest, fear filling every corner of his heart. "What exactly does this mean for us, Sheriff?" "Well, I have to look into her story, Jake. But I'll be completely honest with you. Several things about her account don't add up properly. She says her baby disappeared 3 months ago, but you found Sammy more than 4 months ago. And she can't provide any real proof that he belongs to her. No birth certificate, no doctor's records, nothing concrete." The woman came to see Sammy the very next day, and Jake knew immediately that she was not his real mother. She barely even looked at the baby and seemed much more interested in whether there might be any reward money involved. When Sammy saw her, he began crying loudly and reached desperately for Jake, clearly frightened by the stranger. "This isn't even my baby anyway," the woman finally admitted after a few minutes. "Mine had dark brown eyes, not blue ones like this child." Sheriff Williams was clearly not pleased with the woman's deception. "Ma'am, you have wasted everyone's valuable time with false claims. Making fraudulent statements about a child's parentage is a very serious legal matter." After the dishonest woman left town, Jake held Sammy close and made him a solemn promise. "You are my son, Samuel Morrison. Now and always and forever. Nobody in this world will ever take you away from me. I swear that on my life." Years passed peacefully, and Sammy grew into an exceptionally bright, happy child. He absolutely loved living on the ranch, learning to ride horses almost before he could walk properly, and helping Jake with simple chores around the property. Everyone in Millfield adored him, and he brought pure joy and laughter wherever he went. When Sammy turned 5 years old, Jake decided it was time to tell him the complete story of how they had found each other. He explained everything in simple words that a young child could easily understand. "A long time ago, some people couldn't take proper care of you," Jake said as they sat together by the fireplace one evening. "So they left you in a place where they hoped someone good and kind would find you. And I was the incredibly lucky man who got to become your daddy." Sammy thought about this information very seriously for several minutes. Then he looked up at Jake with those same beautiful big blue eyes that had captured his heart years earlier. "Daddy, did you know that I was waiting specifically for you?" "What do you mean by that, son?" "When I was in that scary dark place, I wasn't really afraid because somehow I knew deep down that my real daddy would come find me eventually. And you did, just like I knew you would." Jake felt familiar tears filling his eyes, just like that very first night when he had heard a tiny voice calling him Daddy. "I will always find you, Sammy, no matter what happens. And I will always be here to protect you and love you." As Sammy continued growing older, people throughout the county often remarked on how much he resembled Jake, despite the fact that they shared no blood relationship whatsoever. They had the same kind, gentle eyes, the same patient way of handling animals, and the same strong moral compass that always pointed toward doing the right thing. Jake taught Sammy everything he knew about ranching, about treating all people with fairness and respect, and about the vital importance of showing kindness to those who needed help. "Son," he would often say, "we found each other at a time when we both desperately needed saving. That experience taught me the most important lesson of my life. Sometimes the most meaningful thing you can possibly do is help someone who cannot help themselves." Sammy took this lesson deeply to heart. Throughout his childhood and teenage years, he was always the very first person to help a neighbor in need, to stand up bravely for someone being bullied or mistreated, or to care for injured animals that others might ignore. When Sammy celebrated his 16th birthday, Jake presented him with a very special gift, a silver locket containing a photograph of the two of them together on Sammy's first Christmas morning. "I want you to carry this always and remember," Jake said with emotion in his voice, "that you were wanted and loved completely from the very first moment I laid eyes on you. Someone may have foolishly thrown you away, but God Almighty had a perfect plan. He brought us together because we were absolutely meant to be father and son." Sammy hugged Jake tightly, tears streaming down his face. "Daddy, I never waste time thinking about those people who abandoned me. You are my real father in every way that matters. You chose me, you raised me, you taught me everything important about life. Blood doesn't make a family, love makes a family." Many years later, after Sammy had grown into a man and started a family of his own, he would tell his children and grandchildren the incredible story of how their grandfather had saved him from certain death and given him a life overflowing with love and happiness. "Your grandfather Jake," Sammy would say with pride, "taught me that every single person in this world has tremendous value, no matter how small or helpless they might appear to be. He showed me through his actions that love isn't just a warm feeling, it's a conscious choice that you must make fresh every single day." Jake Morrison lived to the remarkable age of 92, surrounded by the enormous, loving family that had grown from one abandoned baby and one lonely cowboy who heard a tiny voice call him "Daddy" on a desert trail. He never once regretted his decision to stop his horse that fateful evening, to investigate that heartbreaking crying sound, or to open his guarded heart to a child who desperately needed him. On his final day on earth, with Sammy holding his weathered hand, Jake whispered softly, "Thank you for choosing me to be your daddy, son. You saved my life every bit as much as I saved yours." "I love you forever, Daddy," Sammy replied through his tears. "And I love you too, my boy. Always and forever and beyond." The remarkable story of Jake Morrison and Sammy became legendary throughout that region of Texas. People would tell it to their children and grandchildren for generations as a powerful reminder that sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones that find each other in the most unexpected and miraculous ways. And sometimes, when the desert wind blows gently across those same plains where their story began, folks say you can still hear the faint echo of a tiny voice calling out "Daddy" to the man who refused to ride past when someone small and innocent needed saving.